There is a phrase that I have seen kind of come up, at least in my attention, in the last couple of years. And it seems like everywhere I go, I see this phrase. Right? I see it on bumper stickers, I see it on stickers on people's water bottles, I see it on hats, I see it on t-shirts, I see it on signs that they sell at Hobby Lobby. It's often accompanied by like a surfboard or, written in like retro 1970s lettering. And it's very, very popular. And it's, perhaps you're already thinking of it, good vibes only. We've all seen that around, I'm sure, right? And it's this idea that if you're going to come here to me, if you're going to be in my presence, then all I want is the good vibes, right? If you're going to bring bad energy, as our society calls it, then don't even come here, right? And so we have this phrase, right, that's so popular and so permeated into our culture. And then we have our first reading today from Job, where Job spends basically the whole time talking about how terrible life is, right? Is not man's life on earth a drudgery? Are not his days those of hirelings? He's a slave who longs for shade, a hireling who waits for his wages. I have been assigned months of misery, and troubled nights have been allotted to me. If in bed I say, when shall I arise? The night drags on. I'm filled with restlessness until the dawn. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle. They come to an end without hope. My life is like the wind. I shall not see happiness again. And then the lector said the word of the Lord, and all of us to this speech said, thanks be to God. It's like the exact opposite of good vibes only, right? But I think that that's really important, right? That's a really important thing to recognize. It's a really important reality that we have to acknowledge and we have to embrace. Because the reality is that with Jesus, it's not good vibes only. In fact, with Jesus, in some sense, it's more like bad vibes preferred. He doesn't just want our joys. He doesn't just want the good things in our life. He doesn't just want all of the things that are going right. Jesus wants everything, and especially, he wants our sufferings. Especially, he wants those things that make us like Job. Those things that make us in our life think, is this ever going to end? This is all just toil and struggle and misery and darkness and sadness and bleakness. He wants our brokenheartedness so that he can heal our brokenheartedness. When Jesus goes to Capernaum in our gospel reading today, he doesn't just go and be like, hey, let's all have a party, right? The first place he goes is the synagogue where he preaches the good news to people. And then he goes to the house of a sick person to meet them in their sickness. And he stays there, and all the other sick people come to him. And he welcomes them, and he heals them, and he drives out their demons, and he restores them to a relationship with the Father. He meets them in the midst of their suffering and brings them to a place of healing. And then he goes to bed, and he wakes up the next morning and he goes out to pray. And when he goes out to pray, all of those people who are still some broken, right, who still need his healing, They go and they find him and they bombard him again. And Jesus looks with pity on them and he continues to help them. And then he turns to his apostles and he says, let's go to the next town, and on to all of these other towns. Not because I want to be away from these suffering people, but because there's suffering people there too. And I need to preach this good news to them. And I need to bring healing to them and strength to them and forgiveness and reconciliation and all of these other things to them. That's why we can say thanks be to God after Job's speech. We can say thanks be to God because the Lord allows us to say things like that. And he meets us in the midst of that. And he brings us his love, and he brings us his healing. And so today, as we approach the altar and receive Jesus, don't just bring him the good things in your life. Don't just bring him the things that you're thankful for, although bring those too, because those are also important. But bring him your sufferings. Bring him the things that make you think that life is just toil and drudgery and sadness, so that he can encounter you in that suffering, and so that he can take that suffering upon himself and carry it up Calvary to be nailed on the cross with him. And being nailed on the cross with him, he can bring redemption to those sufferings. He can bring healing to your broken heart. He can bring joy to your sadness. He can bring life out of your death and bring you to rejoice forever with him in heaven.